Hello, our fellow Fadoodle. This is episode 1.5 in our Fadoodle forecast series, the show where we make forecasts and then we review upon them. Today it is for the European Championships 16th edition of its tournament. But before we get into reviewing our predictions, it is advised that you go and click in the card in the top right of the screen in order to see the actual episode in itself. Don't worry, since its launch we've added now timestamps. Wow, our production's really evolved. But how do we rank our predictions in relation to the final tournament? Simples. We get 1 point for guessing each team's correct position in each respective group. 1 point for forecasting which of the third place teams advanced through to the tournament, and if any of the third place teams didn't qualify through to the tournament. Finally, there is 1 point for predicting each knockout stage's game at the correct round, and then another points awarded if we can guess the outcome correctly. So to start with Group A, we predict that Italy will be first, Wales second, Switzerland third, and Turkey fourth. Perfeczione. We are absolutely chuffed about getting a full-on 4 points from Group A. It's fair to say that Gilazzurri absolutely turned around their form from not being able to qualify for the 2018 FIFA World Cup to getting into the European Championships final. But the only concern we had prior going into this tournament was Italy's lack of verses against quote-unquote superpower nations, which ultimately the quarter-finals silenced us when they beat Belgium 2-1. As for the remaining 3 teams, as we forecasted, it would come down to which of the 3 teams were on form. Starting off with Wales, who finished second to many people's surprise. This tournament certainly backed up our evidence suggesting that they were really effective against non-superpower nations, which they did, managing to beat Turkey and drew against Switzerland. Plus, we predicted that Switzerland were going to be very much a stable side, with their best strength being their defence, and it certainly highlighted not only getting a draw against Wales, but another team in the round of 16 that are one of Europe's biggest superpowers. As for Turkey, well, the less said about their performance, the better. Group B, Belgium first, Denmark second, Finland third, and Russia dead bottom. Yes! Let's go! 2 out of 2 groups, perfect. Starting with the champions of Group B, Belgium, with their electric form in pre-season, was very understandably demonstrated, as not only Belgium managed to win every single game in the group stages, but additionally they managed to score at least 2 goals in every game in that group. As for Denmark in second, whilst we do believe the home advantage certainly played a massive factor into the group stage recovery, it was certainly truly inspiring to see them get into second place, considering all the hardship they had to fought against in the group stages, losing one of their star players throughout the whole of the tournament and very nearly having him perish from existence. Despite the loss to Finland, who managed to pick up their only set of points in the tournament against the Danes. Certainly not how we were forecasting them to get their 3 points, but hey, it all worked out in the end as they just managed to beat Russia, who, considering they were World Cup quarter-finalists, had a very disappointing tournament, losing 4-1 to Denmark. So that's without their star player. So that was a very disappointing performance, and I think the Russians will be going back to the dressing board to see what the heck was going on. Group C, Holland first, North Macedonia second, Austria third, Ukraine fourth. And here's where it all starts to fall apart. Firstly, Holland did zoom their way to pole position of Group C with the star power they displayed, especially in that match against North Macedonia, who, despite defeating Germany 2-1 in a pre-Euro match, ultimately finished rock bottom, but at least they had a good run. We were just overly optimistic of their results due to the shock win. Alas, it wasn't meant to be. As for Austria and Ukraine, indeed, in the group stages, Austria was only slightly more stronger than Ukraine, as when these two sparred against each other, Austria beat Sabrina 1-0, and could only muster an additional goal out of North Macedonia when compared to Ukraine. Though Ukraine did concede one less net goal compared to Austria when versing the Dutch. Austria just marginally beat them in the group stages, but as we'd soon find out, in the real tournament it was actually to Austria's disadvantage to finish in second place. Group D, England first, Czechia second, Scotland third, Croatia. One team would overperform, whereas another in this group we predicted team would underperform. Can you guess which one? If you guessed Croatia, then congratulations, you were paying attention. As we believed in the group stage they would suffer from the World Cup curse, as mentioned in Fadoodle Forecast episode 1, again in the card at the top right of your screens. But it wasn't unbelievable considering the quality of players who retired for the Veterani. It seemed like they would completely lose their way, but surprisingly managed to go a fair decent distance in the tournament itself, albeit a very quiet one. And whilst England's pre-tournament form was not the best, it was certainly highly promising, with them being able to top Group D being not a surprise to us, though we were kind of shocked to see them go all the way to the final, the first time they were in a major tournament final since 1966. Meanwhile, Czechia certainly went on the positive side, didn't they? With their 1-0 defeat to Wales in the Qatar water-closet qualification being a blip in a flawless display from the Czechs, but in our opinion being a very underrated performance from the team as a whole. Scotland, despite getting a draw against their home nation rivals England, had probably one of the worst campaigns out of any of the teams. The less said about the Scots, the better. Though we believe through being able to host games at Hampden Park, Scotland were more just happy to be there more than anything else. Group E, Spain first, Poland second, Sweden third, and Slovakia fourth. But once they managed to get that 5-0 victory over Slovakia, La Roja evolved into La Furia Roja. Whilst Poland aged like milk in this tournament, performing more weaker than we were expecting, especially when you considering they had Robert Lewandowski on their team. We were awfully disappointed that Orly Ball couldn't shine in this tournament. And a chop and change between second and third between Sweden and Poland. Well, that was certainly wrong, as Sweden, who were World Cup quarter-finalists back in Russia, losing to England, managed to top this group, which was an incredible achievement. Though some may argue that Spain could have easily toppled it had they brought all the Real Madrid players over, ultimately Sweden had managed to show to the world why they mattered in football, edging out Poland just in an epic 3-2 game. Though, well done to Slovakia for being able to beat Poland, and provided they didn't lose so humiliatively to Spain, they probably would have been able to advance through into the knockout phases. But for all the Swedes, who we clearly underestimate, wie par Fadoodle version 2 uitsagt voor at du understakat dig svenska. Group F, France first, Hungary second, Germany third. They would receive the World Cup curse that none of us predicted. It would happen more in the knockout stages rather than, which looking back on is something our predictions could have addressed a bit better. As for Hungary, unlike North Macedonia really, they demonstrated some proper fight and honestly looked believable to sneak into third place, which would have guaranteed them a seat in the knockouts. And many people would agree that on form terms alone, Hungary were probably first or second in the group. It's just a shame that they didn't quite have that one star player, no disrespect to the Hungarian international team by any means, who could have just been able to help them out. And by international, we really mean the one nation, that is Hungary. Though, despite the fact they didn't get completely destroyed by France and Germany, has to be celebrated considering everybody was expecting Hungary to be stone cold bottom of the fatality group. At least we expected Germany to outperform the reigning European champions in Portugal in the group stages, with their squad having so many players in the Champions League final, really highlighting the additional boost of morale they managed to achieve through competing in Europe's club interdomestic competition. Whilst Portugal's goals were primarily scored by Cristiano Ronaldo, sadly the 36-year-old could not outperform their like-minded superpowers and only saw them progress through the third place system, where the best four sides who finished third in the group stages advancing through into the knockout phases. Even more disappointing considering how well they performed in their UEFA Nations League group stages, but oh well, it was meant to be. Overall, predominantly disappointing, but absolutely fantastic when we get it right. However, we did manage to get 2 points from the third place system, as we predicted Switzerland would advance and Finland would not. As to the others, well, Germany, Sweden, and Austria automatically got top 2 slots, and as for Scotland, well, they were so underwhelming they weren't even able to finish in third. Most of our round of 16 matches didn't happen, so we won't bother wasting your time talking about what ifs, though the two that did and that earn us 2 points onto our tally of 13 are Wales versus Denmark and France versus Switzerland. France versus Switzerland will be a bit closer due to Switzerland being a more consistently stable side, and France will definitely not be able to rest on their laurels. But we predict that as soon as France start a bit of a goal spree, that will essentially psychologically be the end of the tournament for Switzerland. France did start with a goal spree, having scored 3-1 with 10 minutes to spare in the game. However, Switzerland managed to turn the wick up in Romania, getting 2 goals in under 9 minutes and taking it to extra time and penalties, where they knocked out the defending World Cup champion. Certainly one of the surprises of the tournament, the true test of never to underestimate your opponent and only relax once the job is done. Unlike in our other match, are forecasting that Wales will be going out in the round of 16 to Denmark. That was a fantastic prediction, lads. Ironically, the game that was the opposite of what happened in Rosso-Kroatisk match, Idrigai became psychologically defeat after a somewhat second Danish goal. However, the other 2 goals clearly demonstrated to me, as somebody who was rooting for Wales, that Denmark clearly deserved to advance through to the quarterfinals. In a way, they did a reverse of Switzerland. Wales became defeat once something unfair happened and the odds looked like they would not be able to advance, while Switzerland saw that the end was near and fought against it for true success and glory. Meaning we managed to obtain an extra 3 out of 16 points in the round of predicted that Czechia would go to the quarterfinals. But unfortunately it wasn't against Denmark, so we couldn't have earned a bonus point. But the fact I did not see any home islands YouTuber forecast Czechia to get to the quarterfinals. If you wonderful people of the internet can find a non-Czechia content creator who does a whole group stage tournament predicting that they would make it to the quarterfinals, I would love to see that. However, we did score a point for predicting Belgium-Italy. But Belgium versus Italy. We've selected Belgium to win. It is true that Italy have not lost a single game during our time period studied, and Belgium did lose 2-1 to England. However, every time Belgium shows up, there are, generally speaking, at least 2 goals that they can provide. Why do I talk in a way that makes it more boring than going around a roundabout for 2 hours? Though seriously, whilst during the sample period they had on average managed to score 2 goals a game or greater, in the knockout stages they simply bottled it, which is shocking considering the UEFA Nations League win on the 15th of November 2020 to England 2-0 and on a separate day Denmark 4-2. Yet they couldn't beat the Italians for whatever reason. However, we believe in this case, despite England's immaculate record, that they have not been able to defeat Denmark for a reason. And thus, Denmark shall beat England. Semi-finals, we put our metaphorical bets on the wrong teams. Instead of predicting the quote-unquote obvious team to advance. We predicted the underdog Denmark would get to the final of the European Championships. Though seriously, like with Czechia, please put a comment down below to a video of a non-Dane content creator putting Denmark in the semi-finals or the final itself, as we did not see anybody believe in the Danes this much. But the fact they managed to make it to the semi-finals, considering they lost their star player, honestly is a true testament to the Danes themselves at football, and truly this will be one of the tournaments they will never forget. And hence, that's all our conclusions. Since we predicted the reverse of the actual final, it doesn't matter in our predictions who actually wins the tournament. But good luck to the Italians and the English, and all we hope for at Fadoodle version 2 is that the best team managed to win the 16th European Championships. As for our score out of 60 when you add up all the maximum points, we only got 16 of them, or when you round it up, 27%. Which sure is pretty boring and very underwhelming, but when we struck the metaphorical gold, we really achieved some greatness. But before we depart for another video, don't forget to suggest any new forecasts you'd like to see on any football or motorsport matters. And as always, don't forget to stay cooler than a blackberry.